Alright, this happened to me about 3 years ago. It was brought up recently with my friends, and they suggested that I post it here. I've gone through therapy for this and trained in firearms because this was the creepiest night of my life. I spent a night in what felt like a horror movie, and it's still so vivid. It was Wednesday night in the summer. I was off work, my husband was out of town, and our son was staying at his grandma's for the night. I was home alone with my dogs, an 80-pound Aussie mix and my 80-pound German Shepherd pit bull mix. I always have issues sleeping when I'm home alone, so I tend to just binge watch TV in the living room until I can't keep my eyes open anymore. This particular night, I remembered that the trash pickup comes the next day. I decided to turn on Game of Thrones for a bit, then I would take the trash out. All of a sudden, I realize it's 1:30 a.m., and I still haven't taken the trash to the curb. My house has 2 solid iron gates, one in the front and one to the side door, backyard. Lighting on our street or anywhere in our neighborhood isn't that great, but it's a quiet neighborhood with a lot of families, and you rarely hear about crime here. I looked out the window by habit before I took the trash out and saw who I thought was my neighbor smoking a cigarette outside of his gate across the street, looking directly at me. For context, this is a normal occurrence. My neighbor across the street hides smoking cigarettes from his wife, so he typically does it late at night in front of his gate. I get off of work late, so I usually see him and we wave, say hi, chat a little, and then I go inside and he makes the joke, "You didn't see me smoking if my wife asks." So, unbothered by seeing the guy, I go outside, grab my trash cans, open my squeaky iron gate, and take them out to the curb. I did not have my glasses on at the time, so as usual, I waved and said hello. However, the guy, who I thought was my neighbor, threw down the cigarette and quickly walked off down the street. It took a minute for me to register that he was not my neighbor. I was a little creeped out because he was clearly staring into my window from the opposite sidewalk. But also, maybe it was a guy taking a night walk, not unusual in our neighborhood, and just stopped for a cigarette. I thought I probably weirded him out as much as he weirded me out, went back inside, and laid on the couch with my dogs to keep watching Game of Thrones. At some point, I fell asleep and I woke up hearing my gate squeak and my German Shepherd mix growling. He's extremely protective of our family at home, but he's also the kind of dog you can take anywhere because he's so friendly in public. My Aussie mix is more passive, but his sheer size and scary bark tends to deter people. He's very friendly though. I quickly got up and pulled back my curtain. My gate was still shut, and I didn't see anything. My dog, however, continued to growl at my front door. I looked out another window, which had a better view of my front yard and porch. I didn't see anything. Eventually, my dog settled back down with my other dog, but I was still uneasy. I ended up watching TV again because I couldn't go back to sleep. About an hour later, I definitely heard my gate squeak. We are the only ones with a heavy cast iron gate, and the noise it makes is so distinct. So I look out the curtain while my dogs are continuing to softly growl. My gate is halfway open, but I don't see anyone. At this point, I'm panicking. In my panic, I couldn't find my phone. I grabbed my wooden baseball bat out of our room, crouched down, and started going through the couch cushions to get my phone. My dogs are oddly still quietly growling instead of barking, so I assumed no one was there. The minute I find my phone, my front door handle starts shaking. I run to the side door to let my German Shepherd mix out. I know he'll protect me and he can jump the 6-foot back gate. My Aussie mix, going crazy, busts out one of our side lights. I heard the guy say,
"Oh shit."
And immediately I let out my GSD mix. I jumped up to look out the window and I saw my dog latch on the guy's hand. The guy starts screaming and takes off down the street, my dog chasing him. I then become terrified he'll hurt my dog, so I run out with my baseball bat, screaming my dog's name over and over. The next thing I know, my dog is prancing down the street back to me, happy as shit with blood all over his face. I called the police. They took another hour or so to show up and didn't seem to take me too seriously. They said they'd call local hospitals, but I never heard back. I called my husband bawling, and he got on the next flight home. I stayed at his mom's for a few days, too terrified to go home. I did buy my dog's giant ribeyes for being so good and saving me. I don't know what that guy wanted, but since then, I've been trained in firearms and self-defense. So creepy guy, let's not meet because my dog might finish the job he started. When I was 11, my family moved to a very rural area of Minnesota in 1999 after living in a city in Wisconsin. We were surrounded by cornfields, and it was about 45 minutes to any larger town or city. I just want to set this scene a little because as a young kid who was used to the city, it definitely added to the creepy factor at night. What made it even worse at night for me was that a lot of times I was left alone. My mom was a night shift nurse, and my dad was a truck driver, so I would leave the TV on playing Nick at night so I could fool myself into thinking my mom was in the living room watching shows. I would also sleep in their room because it brought me comfort and was closer to the TV. Some may disapprove of this, but at the time there wasn't much to do about it. My parents needed to make money, and this was what they chose to do. Anyway, it was like this often, but one weekend my dad was home, which didn't happen often, so this meant I was in my room, which is right near the front door, and my dad was in their bedroom, towards the back of the house. We had a Springer Spaniel who was my best friend and who slept with me often. One night that weekend, I woke up to him not at my side and could hear what sounded like a dog, my dog, growling and whimpering. I got up, walked to the kitchen right outside my room, and I looked towards the front door. In the entryway, I saw the head of a man bent down near my dog, and I said, "Hello?" Not sure what the hell I was thinking as a young girl. I should have ran to get my dad, but I was worried about my dog, I guess. He stood up, looking startled. I don't remember what he looked like very well, but he was probably in his 40s or 50s, short, and looked a little disheveled. He asked me where a nearby town was, and I told him I didn't know, but could go get my dad. The man had taken a few steps forward, and my dog growled. He then said that he would figure it out and walked out the door. I ran to get my dad, and needless to say, my dad was really upset I didn't come get him right away. The man never came back that I know of. I don't know if he knew I was usually home alone somehow and tried to come in, or if maybe he was drunk and entered the wrong house thinking it was his. It was definitely pure luck that this strange guy tried to get into my house on a weekend my dad was home. I know for sure that my dog may have saved me from something awful happening. I still wonder what he was bent down trying to do to my dog to make him whimper like that. I also wonder what would have happened had I not heard my dog. Anyway, that's my story. It was definitely creepy for me. A few years back, I was living with my aunt and uncle after moving to a new state. They had just moved into a new home in a new subdevelopment. In this area, door-to-door salesmen swarm new developments and new builds for water softeners, cleaning supplies, solar panels, generators, and the Kirby vacuum people. They wander the neighborhood all day, knocking on doors, but were usually gone by around 5 p.m. This particular evening, I was home alone with my dog, a mutt who is mostly black lab and an unknown mixture. He was roughly the size and weight of a full-breed Labrador, but he had a stockier build and long, wiry hair. He was a gentle, sweet baby who was upset if someone spoke harshly to him. I'd never known him to be threatening to anyone. My aunt and uncle were out celebrating their anniversary. This time of year, the days were getting longer, and we would have full dark by around 8 p.m. It was around 7 p.m. and starting to get dusky when someone rang the doorbell and knocked on the door. The door was one of those with a thick glass oval window, and I could see the door and who was there from the kitchen. I was going to ignore them, but unfortunately they could see me and continued to knock, so I went to answer the door. My dog followed me, but stood off to the side in the shadows of the dining room. The person at the door was a young man about college age, dressed in a collared shirt, tie, and khakis. Looked a bit like a Mormon missionary with style. He was thin and about my height, 5'8" to 5'9". I figured he was a salesman of some sort, but thought it was odd that he be out this late in the day. I thought I'd open the door a crack, tell him I'm not interested, and then lock the door. I open the door a few inches to speak through it, and he starts his spiel about Kirby vacuum cleaners, and he wants to come in and give a demo. 1, it's not my house. 2, I know once they get in, they aren't leaving without selling something, and I have no need for an overpriced vacuum. And I don't have $1,000 plus to spend anyway. I tell him, no thank you, I'm not interested, and begin to close the door, when he puts his foot between the door and the door jamb and throws his hands up to stop the door from closing. This is when I think, WTF? And I hear a vicious growling behind me to my right, and then a loud, deep bark, 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 as my dog lunges for the door. I grab his collar to keep him from going out the door. The guy's mouth drops open, his eyes get really wide, and he looks like he's ready to pass out or pee himself as he jumps back from the door and backs away, saying,
I'm sorry, wrong house, wrong house.
And then turns and runs to the end of the driveway, where a car with 3 men in it pulls up to get him, and they speed off, tires squealing. I told my aunt and uncle about it when they got home, and we told a few neighbors so they could keep an eye out for unusual behavior. It's possible that they were a team of Kirby salesmen. They do travel in teams of 4 and follow the door knockers in the car with the vacuum. But I was suspicious because it was late in the day for them to be knocking on doors, and it was a team of 4 men. Usually, they have a team with 2 or more women in the group because they are knocking on doors at a time of day when women are going to be home alone and unlikely to let strange men in. So a team of Kirby salesmen working late to meet quotas, or a team of home invaders. I don't know, but Cosmo wasn't going to take chances.